Hello, everybody. So today we're looking at 14.2, Law of Cosines. All right, so go ahead and take a couple minutes, get this title, get the whole formula for Law of Cosines, and then I'll break down how this thing works. All right, so here is the formula for Law of Cosines. Okay, it's kind of a lot going on here, but we'll get into it. It's not as bad as it looks, but here are the fundamentals. When we go to plug our numbers in, A, B, and C are the side lengths of our triangle. All right, when you go to start these problems, when we're looking for a missing side, the very first thing we'll plug in is the side length we are looking for. Okay, the side we are trying to find will always go in this spot, and then the other two sides will be the rest of it. Okay, this B and C is the same thing as these. They're the other side lengths. This last thing, this angle, is the angle opposite the side length we are trying to find. A lot like with law of sines, when it was all about a side length and the angle opposite. It's the same idea here. This is the side we're looking for. This is the angle opposite that side length. Okay, everything else kind of just falls into place. All right, so it's a weird formula. We'll refer back to it as we do it. But let's go ahead and jump in and try one of these problems. Go ahead and take a second, copy this triangle, and we'll find the missing side. Okay, so first thing to point out, why are we using the law of cosines on this triangle instead of the law of sines that we learned in the last section? Okay, well, if you guys remember when we went to find the missing side length on the law of sines, okay, we were given two of the angles of our triangle. All right, and sometimes we would have to find the third missing side length, or sorry, angle, excuse me, the third missing angle. Okay, but we need two angles to be able to use the law of sines to find a missing side. On this one, they're just giving us a single angle, and there's no way for us to find these other angles. Okay, so that is why we can't use the law of sines. It's why we're going to use the law of cosines. Okay, so first things first, our missing side is this one. It's the one we don't know. Let's call it x. All right, when we go to plug these into our formula, that's the first thing we're going to plug in here. Okay, and so we're going to do, x squared equals, and then b and c will be the other two sides. Okay, so let's start writing this thing out. X squared equals, our b and c, they're interchangeable, but I normally make b the smaller one, so 43 squared plus the other side, 45 squared. All right, so there's the first thing. Sorry about that. All right, and then minus 2 times b times c. Okay, so this minus 2 is part of the formula. It's always there. Okay, times b, that was 43, times c, that's 45. All right, and then last thing, times cosine of the angle opposite the side we're trying to find. So times cosine of the angle opposite we're trying to find. If you want to show yourself in your notes, there it is. It's the 88 that they're giving us. All right, so there it is. That's everything plugged in. It looks crazy, and the rest of this is more or less done in the calculator. But typing this stuff in the calculator is, I think, the tricky part of these problems. So let's just kind of start doing it. All right, so more or less, we can type this entire thing into our calculator as long as we're nice and careful. All right, so grab your calculator, do this along with me, and we'll see what happens here. Okay, but let's start typing it. So let's see, we have 43 squared. Let's see, where's my square? There we go, squared. Okay, plus 45 squared minus 2 times cosine. Oh, wait, sorry, my bad. Not times cosine, not yet. Sorry, backing up. Minus 2 and then times 43 times 45. You don't necessarily need the parentheses, but if you want to use the parentheses, you can. Okay, and then finally times cosine 88. Okay, here's what we're getting. Notice how big that number is. This is not our answer. Okay, and I don't want you to delete this out of your calculator because we're going to use the answer button in this like we did when we were finding angles on law of sines. Okay, but keep this in your calculator. I'm going to write this out a little bit. So 3,738.9. Okay, so x squared equals 3,738.9. I think that was the number. Yeah. Okay, so just leave that there. That's kind of a placeholder. But if you guys notice, What we need to do now to solve for x is get rid of this power of 2, which means we have to do the opposite of squaring, square rooting. We have to do it to both sides. All right, so those are going to disappear. We get x equals whatever this is. Here's the thing. I do not want you to type this number into your calculator. I want you to use the answer key. All right, so going over to this, you should already have this in your calculator right now. So all you have to do now is go ahead and do the square root and then hit your answer button, which is, by the way, that is pushing the top left colored button and then the button above your negative button on the bottom. Plug in your answer, and it'll plug in your exact decimal. You should be getting 61.14. Okay, and we're going to round to one decimal place, so 61.1. Okay, so typing this stuff into the calculator is a really big thing. Please ask me questions if you're having trouble with this. If you're not getting 61.1, call me over, or talk to me next time you see me. But yeah, that's the idea. Now I'm taking a look at this. This looks like the longest side of my triangle, that being 61.1. When this is 60 or 43, this is 45. Yes, that all makes a lot of sense. Okay, so that's the process with finding sides. We're going to do another. So actually, no, we're not. I'm going to have you guys try one out. All right. So yeah, follow that exact same thing. Get all of these numbers in the right spots. You're looking for this missing side. Call it x. Okay. Remember, that'll be the very first thing you plug in to your formula. All right. So plug all your numbers in and then see if you can type this thing in correctly. So give this, copy this and go ahead and give it a try. Okay. So let me get this written out. So the first thing is the side length we're using or we're looking for equals, and just so we're all on the same page, b squared plus c squared are the other two sides. I'm going to make 21b and I'm going to make 26c. All right, and then minus 2 times b times c. So b times c times cosine of the angle opposite the side that I'm looking for, which is the one they're giving me, 35 degrees. Okay, and yeah, from here, it's just making sure I type this in correctly and then taking the square root of both sides. So yeah, let's see what this looks like. Okay, so let's see, 21 squared plus 26 squared minus 2 times 21 times 26 times cosine of 35. Okay, and that's what we're getting. Just remember, this is what x squared equals. So if I were doing this, I would probably just jump to the next thing. I know that, okay, I'm taking the square root of both sides. So I'm going to take the square root. Oops. I always forget this thing requires me. Okay, so I need to click on this. There we go. Get my next. This thing's weird. Okay, but now I can take the square root of my answer, and I'm getting a 14.91. So this is going to round to 14.9. Okay, and I skipped this step. If I were doing this, I would have said, okay, x squared equals, and I would have written some of that decimal here, the 22.48, something like that, 222.48, and then shown that I took the square root of both sides. All right, but eventually when you get good at these, you might not need to show this. You might be able to just go straight to your answer on this. Okay, and I'm looking at this side length being 14.9, when this is 21, this is 26. Like, thought, yeah, that fits into place. Okay, maybe not perfectly to scale on this triangle, but I kind of made up these numbers. Okay, so that's finding missing sides. It's really not too shabby. The other thing we're going to look at today is finding missing angles using the law of sines. This is a little bit trickier, so stick with me on this. All right, so we're going to use the law of cosines to find a missing angle of this triangle. We're going to find the measure of angle B. All right, so go ahead and copy this triangle, and I'll show you the process here. Okay, so first things first, the angle we're trying to find is this angle right here, angle B. Okay. If you want, you could call that X. I think I'm just going to use B. I don't know if that'll be confusing, but I think I'm going to use the name of the angle. All right, so here's the big thing. When we go to type this stuff in, we're plugging the angle we're looking for in at the very end of this formula. That's where our variable, the capital B, that's where that's going to go. Okay, when we go to plug in the other stuff, the A, B, and C here, these are the 3 side lengths that they're giving us. Here's the really important thing. This angle, the side length opposite this angle, must be the first side length we plug into our formula. Those must be opposite to one another. All right. So, for example, if I'm finding this angle here, I must plug in the side length opposite that angle as my very first side length. Okay. So on our problem here, if we're finding this angle, this is the very first side length we must plug in. If you want to kind of underline it and point an arrow just to show yourself in your notes, that is the first side length we got to plug into this formula. Okay. So 27 squared, starting with that. Okay. And then from here, the other two sides are just our A, B, and C are the other two sides. Okay, so I'm going to make 16 one plus 23 the other. Okay, and just by the way, don't get this mixed up with the Pythagorean theorem where we're putting things in certain spots and it's very specific and C is always this certain thing. It's not the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so anyway, minus 2 times BC. Okay, B was 16, C is 23, times cosine of the angle we're looking for, which is B. Let's just call it B since that's the name of the angle. Okay, so here's what we got. This is our formula. Here's the thing. We can't just grab our calculator and start typing things in. We need to simplify a little bit before we can do that. So I'm going to start squaring stuff. I'm going to start typing this stuff in my calculator. Yeah, grab your calculator and let's try this together. So I'm just going to do 27 squared. Okay, so that's giving me 729. Okay. Equals, here's the thing, I can do both of these things together. I can combine these. So I'm going to do 16 squared plus 23 squared. Okay, I'm adding those together and I'm getting 785. All right, be careful. This stuff right here, I can actually multiply together. All right, so again, I'm just simplifying here, but we have to follow our order of operations on this. Okay, we can't mix stuff together, and that's how you mess these problems up really easily. So negative 2 times 16 times 23, I'm getting a negative 736. Okay, and then times cosine B. All right, so this was just me kind of simplifying all of this math here, okay, doing it. And here's actually, this is a really good idea. Show yourself that you kind of did this math together, you did this math together, and then I guess you can put little brackets around this just to kind of show you we did all 3 of these things separately. We had to. Okay, so this is what we have here, and we are starting to solve for B. Here's technically what is going on. Here's how you need to think of these problems. What if instead of these complicated numbers, what if I just wrote them as simple numbers? Don't do this. This is just an example. What if instead of 729, what if this was 7? Okay. What if this was 5? And what if this was a minus 2? And what if, the cosine B is just a variable, right? So what if instead of cosine B, we just thought of it as x? If I asked you to solve this equation right here, you would know, okay, I need to first get rid of this 5 that's being added. I would subtract this from both sides, and then I could get rid of this negative 2 that's being multiplied by dividing it. Okay, that's exactly what we have to do here. All right, so the first thing we need to get rid of is this 785. Okay, it's positive, or technically it's being added to our variable. So to get rid of it, we need to subtract it from both sides of our equation. All right, so this is a little weird, but grab your calculator. So 729 minus 785, we're getting a negative 56. Keep that in your calculator. Okay, so over here on the right, these are gone, and I'm just going to bring this stuff down. Okay, feel free to pause the video if you need to, if I'm going too fast. Okay, now we can get rid of this negative 736. It's being multiplied by our variable, so we're going to get rid of it by dividing. Okay, we have to do it to both sides. Okay, so in your calculator, you should already have negative 56. Go ahead and divide that by negative 736. You should get this big, small decimal. Don't delete that out of your calculator. We should have a 0.0760, and it goes on for a while. Okay, you can just write out, some decimal places. It doesn't really matter. Okay, over on the right, these are gone, and we have cosine of angle B. Okay, so here's the thing. We're solving for B. We need to get rid of cosine. All right, if you guys remember, technically, this is being multiplied. We would divide both sides by cosine, but dividing by cosine is the same thing as multiplying by the inverse of cosine. All right, whenever we find angles, remember, we use those inverse buttons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this thing, and I'm going to, instead of dividing by cosine, I'm going to multiply this thing by the inverse of cosine. Okay, so cosine inverse is being multiplied by 0.0760. All right, and that's going to give me angle B. Here's the big thing. I don't want you to type this decimal. I want you to use your answer key. All right, so inverse cosine of this. So just to make sure we're all on the same page. Actually, I need to get there on my problem. So I need to do this division really quick. So bear with me real quick. So I have a negative 56 divided by, I already forgot it. Sorry. Negative 736. Okay, so there's the decimal, and then I need to take the inverse cosine of this exact decimal. So going to my inverse cosine, gosh, this thing. This calculator is so particular, it always kind of screws me up. Okay, sorry. I need to jump down here. Okay, there it is. Now I can use inverse cosine. And then to use my exact decimal, I'm going to use the answer key in my calculator, and that's going to give me my answer, 85.63. So we'll round this thing to 85.6. Okay, so 85.6 degrees is what angle B equals. All right. This is a difficult problem. If this kind of blew your mind or whatever, like if you weren't able to keep up with me in your calculator, this is one of the trickier parts of this entire chapter. All right. So I'm definitely going to do the next one along with you. Okay. But at the very least, see if you can get this in your calculator. And then, let's see if that works. 85.6 degrees. Yeah, that looks about a little less than a 90-degree angle. Like that looks nice. Okay. Cool. So yeah, let's try one more of these. All right, it's a practice problem. I'm going to have you try it on your own. Get as far as you can, and then we'll look over it together. All right, so big thing. Here's the angle I'm looking for. When I go to write out my equation, all right, I need to start with the side length opposite that angle that I'm looking for. So if we're finding this angle C, we must start with this side length opposite 5. All right, so we got 5 squared equals these other two sides being added together, 4 squared plus 6 squared. Remember, it doesn't matter which one you put in which spot. Okay, minus 2 times 1 times, I guess, both the side lengths times cosine of the angle we're looking for, which we'll call it C. Okay, this is the big thing. If you put your side lengths in, if you didn't put 5 in the front, really is the big thing. If you accidentally put 4 or 6 in the front, just be careful. That is wrong. You got to, write this out differently. Okay, from here, now we're going to simplify. So let me just do this. So 5 squared is 25. Right, which, by the way, it wouldn't be a bad idea to show these brackets again. This is the math that we're doing in our calculator, each individually. So 4 squared plus 6 squared gives me a 52. All right, negative 2 times 4 times 6 gives me a negative 48 times cosine angle C. All right, be careful from here. Now we are solving for a C. We got to deal with addition or subtraction first and then multiplication. Okay, this positive 52 is technically what is being added, so we need to get rid of this first. Remember, this negative 48 is being multiplied. We'll eventually get rid of that, but we got to deal with addition or subtraction first, just like whenever we're solving. Okay, so we'll get rid of this by subtracting 52. Okay, so this is when you want to start grabbing your calculator. 25 minus 52 gives me a negative 27 on the left. On the right, we're just bringing this down. Don't forget all the negatives. Negative 48 times cosine angle C. Now we can get rid of this negative 48 by dividing both sides by negative 48. Don't forget the negatives. It's easy to. Okay, so we're dividing both sides. Over here, negative 27 divided by negative 48 gives me a decimal 0.5625. All right. And that's actually the decimal in the calculator, though I still want you to use your answer key so you can practice it. Okay, so we can write out some of that. These cancel. I've got cosine of angle C. Now we can get rid of cosine by multiplying the left side by the inverse of cosine. All right, so this is just kind of a weird step, but we're going to do, all right, cosine inverse of this decimal. All right, that's a 5. All right, and then on the right, cosine is gone, and we have angle C. Okay, so yeah, this is what you'll type in. So I'm going to catch up to you guys. So negative 27 divided by negative 48. So negative 27 divided by negative 48. You should already have this in your calculator. Okay, so there's that. All right. And now I'm going to take the inverse cosine of this exact decimal. I'm not going to type it in. So inverse cosine, I'm going to use my answer key, and then it'll give me the exact answer, 55.77. So this is going to round up to 55.8. Okay, so if you want to flip it around, angle C equals 55.8. This is an angle, so degrees. All right, so yeah, that is law of cosines. It's weird, but once you get it, it's not too shabby. Just making sure you plug in your numbers correctly. You know, this is the side, this is the angle opposite that side, and vice versa. And then just kind of taking it step by step. It's not too bad. It looks crazy, right? But it's not too bad. All right, so yeah, that's that, guys. Thank you.